Coming up next, it's live from my office. If you're purchasing a new home, refinancing the one you're in, or securing a VA loan or reverse mortgage, do what I have done many times. I call Team Hochberg when it involves money in my house. Team Hochberg is your trusted local lender. Let me tell you about Liam. Liam is a trucker. He called for a free consultation because he was getting charged high closing costs by those rocket-loving lenders. Team Hochberg's loan officer, Johnny Hendrickson, explained the cost that rocket-loving lending charged him the last time he refinanced were ridiculous. Johnny then helped Liam lower his rate, pay off his debt, secure a full closing cost credit. You try to say that fast. And that lowered his payment almost $300 a month. So let's review. Rocket-loving lending took Liam for a rocket ride, and not a good one, by charging him ridiculously high closing costs. Meanwhile, Team Hochberg, who doesn't own a rocket, helped secure Liam a lower rate, a full closing cost credit, saved him over $3,500 a year. Well, that's good money. Listen, you live from my office listeners, Team Hochberg can help you avoid getting violated by lenders charging ridiculously high closing costs, but they can't do it if you don't call 855-56-DAVID or go to 56david.com, 855-563-2843 or 56david.com. And in these crazy interest rate times, it's more important than ever to call an expert, the only one I trust, David Hochberg and Team Hochberg at lower.com, an equal housing lender, NMLS number 1124061. Hello again, and my name is Steve Cochran. Kind of a different live from my office today on a couple of fronts. One is we continue to remember the life and times of Queen Elizabeth and where our partners, the UK, goes from here. My friend Paul Coyte and I spent a lot of time goofing around, saying silly things, making each other laugh, hopefully occasionally making you laugh. And he is one of the best people I know. But he is also a great source of history, if you will, real people history, I guess is the best way I would put it, on how life feels in London and the UK after the Queen's passing and moving on under King Charles and all of the associations with that. And in the interview you'll hear, he brings up something that, it kind of caught me off guard. It's part of the tradition of the UK, and it's something they are destined to say by tradition when the coronation of the king comes up. The king's coronation will be, like in early 2023, as he points out, because of the magnitude of the celebration, the timing, and all the time that's needed to prepare, because you can't do a lot of the front work for that, and something that the assembled will say together, which by 2022, 2023 standards would get you canceled. So listen for that as well. So Paul Coyte joins me to talk about the Queen and life in the UK on this edition. Sponsored by David Hochberg and Team Hochberg, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. And a big thanks goes out as well to our friends at Cantini Golf. Before this year is up, have you played Cantini Golf? Oh, it's cantinigolf.com. If you haven't, you need to. And if you have, you need to again. Thanks to both of them. So let's do this. Let's take a break right up front here and come back, and you'll hear Paul Coyte going into great detail, as I asked him to do, on the life of the Queen and life after the Queen. That's next on Live from my office. Late summer and fall, great times to play golf at Cantini Golf Course. Customer service first and always at Cantini. It's funny because I played a golf course, a very well-regarded golf course, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I guess now, and it didn't get great customer service. And it just made me appreciate what Terry Hanley and his crew do at Cantini even more. They just give you the best with 27 great holes of golf. Amazing flowers all over the place, by the way. It's a visual treat is what it is. And the Woodside, Lakeside, and Hillside Nines each have distinct identities that'll challenge your game, no matter how good you are or whether you're just getting started. Cantini, 5-time host of the Illinois State Amateur Championship, as well as many other regional and a couple of national events as well. Named Best New Public Course when it opened in 1989. And still, all these years later, being awarded again and again and again with all the great public and private courses in Illinois, always ranked amongst the top Illinois golf courses. And recently, the people at Kemper Sports that manage some of the best golf properties in America picked Cantini as their best property in the last year. So hats off to Terry Henley, and we haven't even finished 18 yet. The Red Oak Club is great, too, at Cantini Golf. You can join it for free and earn points towards all sorts of rewards. Sign up in a golf shop or call them up at 630-260-8197. Play golf late summer and this fall at Cantini Golf Course. And tell them we sent you. 630-260-8197. 630-260-8197 or cantinigolf.com. All right, now I'm live from my office. As always, it's a pleasure to say, even in really unfortunate circumstances, this is my friend and yours, live from London, Paul Coyte. Hello, Paul.
Steve, how are you?
I'm fine, and as I expressed to you on the radio show, really sincere condolences on the loss of the Queen. We talked about this off the air, I guess, and on the air. It just is it's so funny to be so solemn about someone who lived an amazing life and lived to be 96, but it's quite sad that she's gone.
It is sad. Is there the thing is, I'm trying to work out whether there is a true solemn feeling. It's different from when Diana died. It does feel different. And I don't know whether it's just the years and social media and people have changed, or whether it was just the shock of a young woman being involved in such a horrible accident. It probably that was probably the main difference in why people feel differently. Obviously, people are sad and upset about it, but also it's almost a slight, when you hear about King Charles and he was been and it sounds weird saying King Charles. There's a lot of applause, and when he was meeting people, it seems it's different. It's almost like it was expected, but still a shock. As I think I spoke to you on before. Like when you lose a family member. But yeah, it is still strange, though. But there's, of course, a sense of sadness as well.
We're talking on Sunday morning Chicago time, and you'll get back to what would normally be a normal week in London in just a matter of hours on Talk Sport, and then people can watch on GB News. And a great app, by the way. Download the GB News app, and you can see Paul because he's on at a terrible time for you and me here in America, the middle of the night. But having said all of that, there's nothing normal about the next 2 weeks, right? So how will your lives be affected? Will businesses be open? What does a 10-day period of mourning actually mean?
Well, as far as I know, this is pretty much up in the air. The only real difference that we've noticed is there's been no football, there's been no soccer over the weekend. Now, there's a couple of ways of looking at this. There's been cricket, there's been other sport, there's been golf. Although on the next day that was stopped. This is the PGA that was going on the
BMW
World Tour
thing,
which is going on at Wentworth. But as far as football's concerned, now cricket did this, and when cricket returned at the weekend, they all lined up. The cricketers lined up. This is a big match between England and South Africa. So it's at Oval, which is a very famous cricket. So this is a big deal. And the players lined up, and they had the minute silence, and they had the flag at half-mast, and they had the national anthems, and it was very moving, and it was done very well. Now, I think the true reason that they've stopped football is because they're worried about the class of fans and how fans will react. Oh. Now, we've known it before, because but the thing is different. If there's, for example, a famous player has passed away who played for one team, we've had it before where the opposing side may ruin that minute silence. You might get some idiot may shout out, maybe just the odd one or two. So then they changed that and they made it a minute's applause. I don't know whether they do that over in the States. Instead of having a minute's silence at sporting events, they have a minute of applause to celebrate that person who's passed away, which never really has the same effect for me. It's not as moving. It's not as nice. Not as respectful, but it's more of I think the reason they do that is, just to cover any problems or if anybody shouts out. So now with the Queen, obviously you would need a minute's silence. I mean, a minute of applause is just not appropriate. So they've actually said, well, no, we're going to cancel all football as a mark of respect to the Queen. Okay, fair enough. But other sports have gone on, and I think it would have been more respectful to go on and do it, and then have a very moving ceremony at the start at all football grounds, which I think would have been perfectly respected.
I agree.
But for some reason, they've said no, and it's almost like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You know, it's like the Football Association are saying, well, you know, we thought it would be the right thing to do, but then again, you're going to get people complain if it does go ahead, and there's people that complain if it doesn't. But the thing is, it's even gone down to grassroots level. So it's even gone down to kids football. It's like Little League, whereas they've even stopped that for the weekend, which is just ridiculous. So anyway,
well, what about work and life in general? Will people go to work and get back on their regular schedules?
I'm sure they absolutely. The funeral is a bank holiday, so that's a week on Monday. So that's the 19th, I believe. Right. So that will be a bank holiday, so people will not be working on that day. But apart from that, it's a normal working day, but it is still the country is in mourning. So, for example, I'll be going on TV tomorrow, and I will be expected to dress in black as a mark of respect, but still life will go on, if you see what I mean. It's not as it would have been years and years ago, back in 1952, you know, and the whole place in the top hats and very dark clothing, and just a very, it's life is going on, but with respect. But if you can see the way things have gone on, they've been ready for this. They've been ready for this for obviously a long time. Even the way that Prince Charles became King Charles in the official ceremony, that's not the coronation, which will then, I should think, will happen next year. But everything is in place. All these ceremonial things. Even you see the funeral cortege that left Balmoral, took 7 hours to get to Edinburgh, which was today, and then we'll move then down to London. So everything is all planned, but it was probably planned a long time ago. But they called it Project London Bridge. So it's London Bridge. Okay, and that's how they knew, right, everything now we go into where we're supposed to be. So there's always, but then again, I think for any head of state, how even the unlikely ones, probably even the states, they have that as well, right? And then there's always a protocol. We know what to do should that happen.
But you know, it's interesting. It's interesting because your country is so steeped in tradition, which I think is one of the strengths of the UK in general. But the tradition being that the coronation does take place long after the Queen previously and the King takes the throne. But for instance, in this country, when there's a change in leadership, the new leader is sworn in short order. It's a couple of months after an election. You know, your new prime minister took office just last week fairly quickly, and that can change quickly. The government can change quickly. What's the reason, since this wasn't a surprise that she would pass at some point, why would the coronation still be 2 or 3 months away?
I think because this is a very, very big ceremony. For example, it's like the swearing in of a president. If you look at, I guess, LBJ after John F. Kennedy, that was done on a plane, wasn't it? There wasn't the whole ceremony on the steps of Washington outside the Lincoln Memorial. And that's the equivalent, but probably with respect is even bigger, because the coronation is a very, very big ceremony. And also, you can't really, it's also a day of celebration. So you don't really want to have it that close to a funeral.
Yeah.
You know, and you always said to me, I mean, and, you know, we laugh about that. You know, when you used to say about, you know, when's Chuck going to get the hat? When's Chuck going to get the hat? Where, of course, now he's king, and it's not going to be, okay, and this is the phrase that they use in the coronation. This goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, that the whole congregation would all shout in unison, the old Queen is dead, long live the king. And in that situation, when it's the Queen, the old king is dead, long live the Queen. Although it sounds a bit harsh.
It does.
For this day and age, especially when she's only just been buried. So I think they have quite a lot of separation between the coronation, the coronation itself and the funeral.
I've never heard anyone else talk about this, and this is fascinating to me. In this cancel culture we live in, and it's active in the UK as well as here, where the most minor of slights could actually cost you your job, your career, your livelihood, and worse.
Yeah.
Will that phrase still be said? Because there's a great war there, right? It's a celebration of tradition versus the reality of today. Will they say, the old Queen is dead, long live the king, when the coronation happens next January or February?
I think they will, because the thing is, this is what's expected and this is what's gone on all this time. Because I don't think there's going to be, some snowflake is going to go, oh dear, that's a bit harsh. We can't really say that. I can't really, because they probably don't agree with the monarchy anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Right.
But you're right, though. There are things that are going to have to be maybe tweaked. People are now, I've heard it now, recited 3, 4, 5 times, the national anthem now, which of course has changed, which is now God Save the King.
Yep.
And is weird because it's so natural, because nobody knows any different. The majority of this country, or the majority of the world, has not known anything apart from God Save the Queen. So the national anthem lyrics have changed. I think they've probably changed on Google already. Maybe Wikipedia have already updated that. But obviously it's now send him victorious, happy and glorious instead of her, all these small things. And
Sure.
You were the one that mentioned it to me. I didn't even think about that, about currency. Currency is another thing. There's going to be new currency. Obviously, the old currency will be there, but all the new currency that's created will have Charles on. Stamps will have Charles. We've got post boxes, letter boxes, where, we post our letters, which are very famous red pillar boxes that we would call them. They would have ER on for Elizabeth Regina. So now with the 2 in the middle and the new ones are going to be CR for Charles Rex and the 3 for Charles III. So any new post boxes will then have to be changed because everything is going to be under the Charles reign, so to speak. So
I want to
lot has to be done.
I want to come back to King Charles and the family and the interesting things that have happened over the past few days since the Queen died.
Yeah.
But prior to that, let's talk about her and her life a bit more. One of the things that struck me about her long before this end came, and you and I've talked about this as well, there was a grace, there was a dignity, and there was a sense of duty that I think will maybe never be matched, because she was certainly not without flaws. She was a human being. But having said that, she didn't ever get involved in the dust-ups. And even with things you knew she strongly disagreed with, she dealt with it behind closed doors. I think that's rather remarkable in this year.
Yeah, we do not have an opinion in public. That's it. There is the royal family. This is what happened with Charles I and Oliver Cromwell, and going back, where it was the divine right that the king or queen ruled, and they ruled the country, and whatever they said went. And then it was questioned, and it was like, well, this is actually not right. This doesn't make sense. We need a parliament. So from that moment on, the queen or the king or whoever is the monarch is there as the head of state, but their say in governmental matters does not apply. I mean, they are kept up to date. For example, the red box, the famous red box, the Queen would get at the end of every day. So she would be privy to everything that would be going on in Parliament and in government, and secret stuff as well. She would be privy to everything. And every week, the Prime Minister would travel to Buckingham Palace or wherever the King was to discuss the matters of the day. Now, the Crown did this really well. And this was really interesting that you see that from Winston Churchill, who was the first Prime Minister that served under her. See, this is the amazing thing. You've got 101 years separate the birth of Sir Winston Churchill, who was her first Prime Minister, and Liz Truss, who was the last one. And obviously this was her last.
How about that?
Actual official duty was to sign in. 101 years difference in their births. So there's 15 Prime Ministers, and each one that would have to go and present to her whether they felt one way or whether they thought, this is a waste of time. But she would give her opinion to them. Whether they took it is their choice, but it was never expected that whatever the Queen said would go, but she would be across everything that was going on. So she would have to see everything, and every single day she'd have a pile of papers that would land on her desk, and she'd have to go through the file.
It's amazing to me, and it's not just because of the blowhard Donald Trump and how he changed everything for the worse in regards to behavior in Washington and behavior of politicians. But there was always leaks in this country. There were always leaks about the first families. And you have to go back to maybe, Woodrow Wilson, whose wife largely finished his term after he had a stroke. Certainly the Kennedy affairs were kept quiet by the media. But there were leaks. There were leaks about the president, was angry. The first lady is angry. All of those things. And you never heard that. And I didn't realize this. The Queen herself never sat down for a formal interview. Isn't that right?
I think that is right.
That's amazing. That is
be,
amazing to me.
I'm trying to think. There's been documentaries. There's been,
but there's never been a sit down. There's never been a sit down, long form, one-on-one interview. There never was with the Queen.
No, I can't think of anything, because if you think David Frost with the Queen, that would be the ultimate. But there never was, because it was like, well, no. What do we answer? What do we talk about? It was so bizarre when Princess Diana did it, because I think she was one of the first royals, although she was less royal at the time after she broke up with Charles. And this is what made it so huge, is that the royal family, there's just not interview situations. Maybe there is. Maybe there is somewhere down the line that I'm not thinking of, but I can't think of anything.
No, that's the reporting here that there never was.
Yeah. Because you would never, because the thing is, as an interviewer, you would want to delve, you want to know more,
sure,
but only so much could truly be given. So you would, it's a bizarre one, isn't it? Yeah, it's a good point, though.
And you think about it, even with all the staff and all the servants, all the people that serve the royal family, there still had to be moments when her children were young where she lost it and started screaming about, clean up this palace or we're not going anywhere. Typical mother things, and you never saw that from her. Did you ever in your life see the Queen not exhibiting that stiff upper lip? Did she ever show she was upset about something in public outside of mourning and appropriate mourning phases?
No, because their childhoods would have not been like any other childhood. So were they brought up by the Queen and Prince Philip? This is up for conjecture. Only their children can actually say that, because they don't know any different. They went to boarding school.
That's true.
There were nannies. The family was away. For example, when Prince Charles was young, they went on a royal tour for like a year, and that's it. And then that's just expected, because it's one of the sacrifices that is made to the royal family. It's awful when you think about it. I mean, can you imagine doing that? Well, like with Amy or Ross, and when they were smaller, going, well, that's got to go off for a year now. And
it's amazing.
And the thing is, no, we're not talking phone calls. We're probably talking the odd telegram. That it's just expected, and it was a thing of the day. And things are different now. But I mean, it was it must have been very tough. But the thing is, they're trained for duty. It's what they are expected from when they are very, very young. And it's not a normal life. It's completely illogical. It's just completely out there. It's like no other life exists. Because even when fame comes and goes with a lot of people, same as presidents, they'll probably grow up as normal kids, fairly normal kids, and live a life until they then reach that high office.
Right.
In the Queen's case and the royal family's case, they're born into that, and that's with them for life. So when you see that Harry and, whatever we feel about Harry and Meghan, there is always a degree of sympathy to think, well, do I sympathize because you didn't have any choice? You were expected that you were born into this, and therefore you've actually said, you know what, I'm going to choose to do what I want to do. And this also happened with the abdication back in 1936 with Edward VIII and the American Mrs. Simpson. He wanted to marry her, but it was expected, because no divorcees, absolutely not. You can't do that. This is 1936 in England. You're supposed to be the king, and you're supposed to lead the example. And it's like, well, I love her more than I actually love what I'm expected to do, so I'm going to step away, which was greeted with huge scorn. It's like, well, that's your duty. That's what you were born to do. So there is a really difficult decision to make and think about amongst the royal family, but that's what they're born to. So it has its ups, but it has its downs as well. I don't know whether I would like it.
Well,
although I'd be king for a little while.
You brought up the point a long time ago. We were talking about the crown, and you and I are cynical and sarcastic because that's part of the job, but and judgmental. It's part of our charm. But we don't generally hold up television shows and go, well, this is pretty close to how it could be. But you brought up that people who knew the royal family, and inside the royal family, that the Crown, which not surprisingly is the number one show on Netflix now, the Crown was the closest representation of what it might be like behind the walls of Buckingham Palace and the walls of the royal family. And it's the first time I had seen how crushingly hard and sad it was to be the most famous family in the world and not have those choices you're talking about.
Yeah, when you look at Charles, with the stories about Charles, if there's stuff that is added or taken away, purely for drama, just look at the basic story, and the basic stuff is true. About him going away as a small child and he's expected to. It's heartbreaking. I mean, it's absolutely heartbreaking when you see what Charles went through as a king and bullied really badly, and you think, God, it's just awful. So I don't know whether you heard this, but The Crown that's supposed to come out next month, the next series, and this will cover Diana and the breakups, and and just the annus horribilis that the Queen called it back in 1992. So now it's they're deciding, is this the right time? Is this disrespectful to bring this out now? So I wonder, I'd be surprised if it comes out next year, and probably we'll probably have to wait for the new year. There's a lot of denials about it, but who's going to argue? Who's actually going to stand up and go, you know what, this is actually what happened, not this. This is kind of, so how much is true and how much isn't, I still don't know. But the actual basis of the story and where it sits and the meetings and the history of it is true. It's just what happened behind closed doors. Maybe that's a little more dramatized, but I think it's a great series. But a lot of people are very unhappy about it, especially people that have been within the walls,
Well, let's talk about your new king, King Charles, for a second, because his popularity and his place has been questioned for a long time. His interest.
Yeah.
Now, I think he deserves credit for being way ahead of the game on climate change. Prince Philip, who died at 99, believed that climate was an issue that needed to be near the top of everybody's agenda. But he also had things. Yeah. He has tremendous interest in gardening and tremendous interest in things that don't necessarily have mass appeal.
That makes a good king.
So
if a king likes gardening, for me, that's a proper king.
So
gets his hands dirty. Green under the fingernails. That shows a proper king. He knows how to live the life.
So in the big picture, all the skeptics, maybe they've fallen aside now to just do the humane thing and allow him to grieve his own mother and get his feet more solidly on the ground in the new job. But what is this going to be like for you as a Londoner and a citizen of the UK going forward? Do you believe the king is up to the job?
Yeah, I absolutely believe the king is up to the job. I've been asked this a lot as well. What differences are going to happen? What's going to change? Well, nothing is going to change, because this is not a political figure that's going to come in and go, I have these new policies and we're now going to do this. That is not the job of the royal leader. This is not their job. Their job is basically to do what they do. And this is go to meetings, and they do goodness knows how much charitable work and meet. I'm just trying to work out, what the hell does the Queen do? What do they do? What do they do? I know they're very busy. That's 2 days off a year, but they do king. They're going to do king things. He's going to do king royal things. Is he going to make changes to maybe the way the royal family works? I don't know. But as far as actually being a king, I don't think that's going to make any difference to anybody. But I do think is that people do like him and do respect him, and I think he will be successful as king. And I don't know.
Do you think there was a moment at any time where
what a great king it's going to be?
Do you think there was a moment at any time where the Queen just said, if I have to cut one more friggin' ceremonial ribbon, I'm going to lose my mind?
Don't make me stick a knife in another cake. I don't want the cake. It's all very good. She's a very things you would never hear the Queen say. Yes, she's a very cute 7-year-old, but I really have flowers coming out of my ears. I don't need them. It's very kind. Or how about this? It's a lovely thought, but I really don't need to be patron of your charity. It's all this stuff. It's just constant. Yes, yes. I don't know your name. I don't know the country that you run, and it is very nice to meet you. But I'll be here in about 10 years. You probably won't be doing this job. But it's just constant.
Actually, you could not do that on any form of mass media in your country. You're more than welcome to do that after a decent period of mourning here. Things the Queen probably said. Get them off your chest. All right. So Charles, we believe in Charles. And I do too, by the way, from a distance, obviously. But I thought his first speech was touching. and really appropriate. The notion that he brought the brothers back together with their wives to do a family show of unity. I thought that was nice, and that was certainly what the Queen, I would think, probably would have wanted in the big picture. Maybe not officially, but I think that's what she would have wanted. So it's good to hear you say it, though, because you have the accent and I don't, so therefore you have authenticity. That things will go forward and everything's going to be okay with our number one ally, and as it's often awkwardly put, our very special friends, the UK, England, Great Britain, and London.
Well, I appreciate that. I think everything's going to be all right. It's been it was a very sad day. We knew something was up. When you just get an announcement from the palace saying that the Queen and whatever the words were, the fact that doctors were there, and very well that something bad is up, and then there's rumours going around that maybe she'd already passed away, or what's the protocol here, and we know that it's going to be at some point today, so just waiting. And even then, when you get those goosebumps when you hear the official announcement. But, like we say, she was a 96-year-old lady. And, when it's your time, it's your time. And it's almost like it was tied with a little royal bow and a seal at the end. We got through the Platinum Jubilee, through all the ceremony and, of course, the celebrations that happened during the summer. And there's a new Prime Minister. And it's almost like she held on because she knew that was her last official job, the last thing she had to do. And then it was like, okay, now it's time to go. And it was just, you know what I mean? It's almost like a bow. It's sort of like tied up, and there we are. That's it.
Yep.
And it's the perfect way. It's all done now, and everything's finished.
Bo reminds me of...
Like you waited.
Bo reminds me of Rainbow. The double rainbow was really touching and amazing to see. And if you're spiritual at all, I'm sure it touched you as well. What we probably don't need to do is look for something other than the double rainbow. I know, as we do this on a Sunday morning after the Queen's passing, there's a lot of people talking about a cloud that looked like the Queen. We don't need clouds that look like the Queen.
That would be a tricky one.
Yes.
That's a tricky one to manage, isn't it? The rainbow is one thing, but whoever is managing this somewhere in the universe that's going, okay, the rainbow's good, but I've now been working on a cloud. It looks just like it. Let's send that over Buckingham Palace. But the thing is that it was almost fitting, and if you think of London and if the world, and it was raining, it was pouring with rain, and we've had so much sun, and it's been so hot over the summer, but the heavens open, and it was pouring with rain, and then that moment with the rainbow, and sometimes if you are spiritual, if you're not, you kind of raise your eyebrow and you think, could be something, because it just fit. Everything
really did.
Seemed to fit.
No, it really did. All right, last two questions.
Apart from the cloud, I'm not sure about the cloud.
Yeah, the cloud, not so much. Last two questions. I promise I'll let you go. You are not just one of my best friends in life, but you're a great son and a phenomenal father. What do you? Your mom's health, thankfully, is great. You lost your dad a few years ago. What do you think your dad would have said?
Yeah. What about
the passing of the Queen? About the passing of the Queen, and because in the scope of history, 80+% of Brits have never known anyone else as the head of state.
He would have seen it a few times. So he was born in 1934, so he would have seen.
Oh, he would have seen.
Would have been too young.
Yep.
But my mum remembered 1952 and the coronation in 1953. There's still a mug that she's got at home from the coronation of 1953, and it's just something that I think, interestingly, what she'd said is it's just there's so much. They're covering everything at the moment. So TV is not like it was years ago, whereas everything would just be blacked out, nothing at all. And the news coverage, there's nothing else apart from this. So it'd be everything from just discuss. I mean, they spent the day on TV discussing that statement that came from Buckingham Palace before we heard that she'd gone at 6:30, 6 hours, just going through this statement. What's possible? What do we think? Without actually saying we think the Queen's going to die, but they had to keep going. So I think he would have just been, I think like everybody else. It happens. It was she's had an amazing amazing reign, 70 years. But, it moves on, and the monarchy moves on. And it's now on to, and also that has to modernise again, and it will modernise again and go with the times. I think that's the only real criticism many people have had. Although it probably happened, it changed probably more after Diana than anything else. It was something that was so rooted in the past and so out of touch with modern times, it had to modernise, or else it would have disappeared. So I think that's happened. I think with Charles and certainly with William, that it has modernised, but it's a very strange system. It's a very strange thing that people would actually go, well, hold on, they're not voted in, so what do they do?
Right.
And why are they there? But it's just always been that way because we go back to the 9th, 10th century, because there's always been a king or a queen of this country. And I think there always will be, to be honest with you.
I don't disagree with that at all. And if not, it'd be very upsetting to a lot of people in this country. So I think you owe that to us. Because, again, in America, we do make it all about us, as you know. The last question of those two that I promised, the last question is this. I am much more fond of your children even than you, as you know. And Ruby and Joe are now, they're well into their teens. They've got ideas about life. What was their reaction to this?
Okay, I'll be honest with you. With Ruby, I was watching it on TV, and she was very much into it. And I made a point to both of them. I said, this is history you are watching. Kid, you will remember this for the rest of your life. You will tell your grandchildren about, you remember where you were. It's the old JFK thing, and any major moment, the first landing on the moon in 1969, you will remember where you were, when you heard. So make sure you're aware of everything that's going on and take it in, because you'll be asked about in future. And Ruby, who's going to be a history major, and I said, this is going to be taught how this happened, and the Queen, and when she died and everything, you'll always remember this. So she has, and so we sat and watched it together. And Joe said to me, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying this. This is just a couple of days ago. He said, "I'll be honest with you, but I don't really feel anything." So I said, "Well, you don't have to."
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't feel a true association with her. I know she's the Queen, but I don't feel sad about it. But I don't really feel anything that maybe I should. But that's the way things change, And as a 15-year-old, why should he?
No, it's perfectly appropriate. Perfectly appropriate.
This is my monarch, and I have to truly feel something, and I should be crying. And it's the same as most of us. That people are not crying in the streets. They're not. The more we see it, and then by the funeral, it'd be very moving, and I'm sure that's going to be the case. But for a 15-year-old, it's different.
Of course,
to someone that's in their 70s or 80s. So that's the honesty. So that's what he said to me.
Yeah, well, and to think back,
but the most important thing is that we experience it in its history.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think back to when you and I were both 15, we only cared about things that mattered to us. At least your son had the wisdom and the decency to say, yeah, it just doesn't affect me. Should it affect me more? In other words, we already knew, he's much smarter and a much better person than you and I ever were.
He absolutely is. And I still say, we sit at dinner and something's going on, and I said, well, we better ask Joe because he's the most sensible one. So, he should be king.
Yes.
He should be king.
Yes.
He'd make a great king.
I'd have to see the flow chart. I think he's down on the list, but anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Absolutely.
Well, this is much different than our normal conversation, but I really appreciate it. The insight and
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and
I really enjoyed it.
I felt like I revived the old London tour guide in you as well, in talking about history.
Know.
So please listen to my friend Paul on TalkSport. You can listen to it on TuneIn Radio or the TalkSport app in most cases. Sometimes there's country blockages and all that, as frankly, Paul's country hasn't completely gotten over the war. But if you can't listen in one way, keep looking for another app to listen as well. TalkSport, it would be at 11 o'clock Chicago time. And also, of course, GB News, where you're doing sports commentary each morning, and not the traditional, here's the score, here's what's happened. Just talking over the world of sport as you see it in your country and around the world. You're great. You just do great stuff with that, and also longer form interviews. So I'm a big fan, Paul Coyte.
Listen, I don't know if you know that, but I still think you're the best in the business, mister. I don't know whether I've said that to you recently, but it's the truth.
Well, you're a good man, and you got to stop day drinking. That's Paul Coyte. Next time we talk, it'll be much more ridiculous than this, but we hope you enjoyed it on Live from My Office. Thank you again to my friend Paul Coyte for bringing us all of that in relation to the Queen's life and the future under King Charles. Amongst the reams and reams of material that you could have read and seen about the Queen or watched on her life, there's a list of quotes that she gave throughout her 70 years that are they're really relevant now, regardless of the time when she said them. As you know, one of the things that I've said all the time is we're way too down. We're way too negative about life today and all the blessings we have. This is a quote from the Queen. Perhaps we make too much of what is wrong and too little of what is right. The trouble with gloom is that it feeds upon itself, and depression causes more depression. How much does that apply to today? It doesn't matter when she originally said it. The Queen had a vision for her country, but whether she thought about it at the time, maybe a vision for the rest of us as well. Politics are a problem in Great Britain, not to the extent that they are here, but she also said, this is a quote from the Queen, "We may hold different points of view, but it is in times of stress and difficulty that we most need to remember that we have much more in common than there is dividing us." Wow, wouldn't it be great if we actually bought into it, agreed with it, and did something about it? And finally this, which is obviously timely for all the reasons you would guess, and maybe it's a message to her subjects and to the world. Grief is the price we pay for love. It's the life of Queen Elizabeth, 70 years on the throne, 96 years of an amazing life, and now King Charles takes it from here. I'm glad you listen. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you do. And thank you, Ross Cochran, for putting this together, as always. We check the line of succession, and Ross is even farther down than I am, so it doesn't look like either one of us will be king anytime soon. In the meantime, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you listen, and I hope you listen to the radio show as well. It's 5:30 to 9 on the Big 890 WLS. After 9 o'clock, you do what you want. My political views, my life views, my Chicago views, that's what you're going to hear between 5:30 and 9, and I hope you'll listen. And I'm glad you listen here. And we'll come back later this week, play you a couple things from the radio show you might have missed, and a brand new Deep Six later in the week as well. This is Steve Cochran, and this is Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to cochranshow.com for more.